and welcome to the Sport for Business Daily. It has been a big day in terms of announcement of funding for sport, with 85 million euros committed to by the government back in June and distributed today by Sport Ireland. We're joined by Paul McDermott, who heads up the high performance unit in Sport Ireland. Very warm welcome to Sport for Business, Paul.
Thanks, Rob. Nice to be here.
It has been a good day. It's not often that you get to distribute quite that amount of money, but of course it's never easy, and this has been a very detailed process. Can you give us a little insight as to how that has worked since the original announcement to today's news that the money has been allocated?
Okay, happy to explain. Obviously, it is a good day, but it's only a good day in the sense that those we'd all prefer not to be here, but we are here and we are where we are, and we have to respond to a unique threat, not to the Irish economy and society and sport in particular. So obviously we went into lockdown around March, and Sport Ireland had a number of priorities with the community, working in collaboration with the governing bodies, sports partnerships, other partners in sport, and particularly our colleagues in the Department of Sport. And one was, under the prevailing public health advice, that we would try to get sport back at the appropriate time safely. The second thing is we were very keen that our high performance athletes could resume training on the campus or in their high performance training location of choice. And thirdly, then, to make a proposition to the government around a financial package that would be required to help sustain sport during this sort of months of unique crisis through a lockdown. We worked with sport. We had a lot of information, and we worked in collaboration with, as I say, a number of colleagues, and we put together a proposal, again, like a collective effort. And the number of 70 million emerged from government because we're under certain strands, right? So obviously we had, the major commercial sports, they were going to take a hit because, basically, the cash that comes, the money, the economy that's generated by people going to matches, and the sponsorship and the event revenue and everything that goes with that. Also then, the wider family of governing bodies were also seeing, effectively a cessation of operations. And the club network, with the vital club network around the country, they were seeing, they'd no operations and they'd no means. And some of them would have a significant cost base, maintaining facilities, keeping, grass cut or whatever it happens to be. But there are costs associated with running facilities and clubs, with nothing coming in the door. And finally, then, we also wanted to maintain that not only that, but that sport would continue to contribute to public health and therefore be ready to resume when the time was right. Now, happily, this summer, we did get quite a bit of sport back, which was good. And we published guidelines in June or July. We had engagement with the sports. We had workshops and conversations, and we worked with sports over the summer. And we specifically set a deadline in September for the October board meeting in Sport Ireland, because we thought that would give us a better idea over the course of the year, really where the problems would lie. So obviously, the fact that the money was announced immediately alleviated certain pressure, because then the cash cliff, the cash crunch, is immediately alleviated when people know, well, there will be cash coming at some point. But then just the cessation of operations, we worked with the sports and we had the applications, and it was unusual. Normally when you're doing a grant application process, you kind of have a deadline, you don't talk to people. We were very keen to continue to talk to people. It's a once-off unique situation. We wanted to make sure that the money was going to where it needed to go to. So as well as the major commercial operations within sport, we also wanted to make sure that the club network and all of that, and vulnerable groups such as the disability sports or the older people, that they would also see some grants, some financial benefit. Now, I want to say, it is important to say, and Sport Ireland knows this better than anybody else, money doesn't fix every problem. We're not pretending that it does. But it's absolutely vital to maintain the infrastructure of sport. So, there are other initiatives ongoing. There's training, and my other colleagues and other people in sport are doing other things. So money helps a lot, but it's not the only thing. I mean, we want to acknowledge the fantastic work the whole community of sport who've continued to operate during the summer and do wonderful things. But I think in this particular moment, when there was real risk over the governing bodies and their clubs, and real risk over, solvency in some cases, that this money is absolutely vital, and it is a big day.
And the bulk of the money has gone towards the traditional big three sports. So the GAA gets just over 30 million, rugby gets 18 million, the FAI will get 16 million, again, distributed across many units, many different clubs. But there has been a significant fund put towards the other sports as well, the likes of cricket, golf, tennis, badminton, volleyball, gymnastics. They will have benefited from this. The application process seems to have given pretty much everything that people felt they needed to mitigate the effects of the pandemic. Is that fair to say?
Well, we hope so. I mean, that was by design. We designed it. It was complex enough design, 4 streams, and with the GEA getting additional money for the All-Ireland Championships, effectively a 5th stream of funding. But the idea was that we would address the various needs, as in the big commercial operations who just, had this was an unforeseen catastrophe, really. It stopped operating, so they needed help. But then the governing bodies, and then to get interlope, so we designed it so much that there'd be different streams that people could draw down the funding from. In addition to that, we have held back a substantial amount of money for the 4th quarter should further need arise, which is very likely because we're now into another phase of the public health crisis, and therefore there may be further needs arising. And we're aware that certain sports, like the indoor sports and the winter sports, are going to have a knock-on impact. Furthermore, we were very anxious that if we were to have these funds and continue with the activity and work with all our partners and collaborate through the system, that the budget for next year would also reflect an increase. And happily, that has done it. So all of these are confidence-building measures. And the sports know. So if we've missed any, we're very open about this. If we've missed anything, people can come again. If there's another problem for the end of the year, people can come again. And in fact, a number of governing bodies have, they've been very responsible in what they've applied for. They've said, look, maybe our problems in 2021, the high performance community wouldn't have expended all of its resources this year, but next year is going to be a very busy year for high performance, very expensive year. So, the issues of 2021 we'll deal with next year, but we've tried to deal with everything, but we'd also try to reassure people that the door is not closed. If there's something we've missed or something people feel that there's an emerging issue, we're there for that too. We will help, because the fundamental principle here, this isn't like a normal grant, annual grant or anything. This really is just to keep sports, the doors open, financially in good, in root health, be ready for the resumption when it comes, because like all things, this too will end and we will have a resumption of sport sometime. So that's the abiding philosophy. The door is open, we're always willing to listen. We have held back money, and if we've missed something, which I don't think we have, but if we have missed something, just get in touch.
And that was good to see, because obviously when this announcement came out in June and then you were planning for it over the summer, there was a different level of optimism that maybe we had been through this. And there was that spectre on the far horizon of a dark winter and a second wave and everything which had transpired. But we tended to push that back a little bit. So we were more optimistic then. 2021, there is substantial additional government funding coming through for the national governing bodies in terms of their core funding and the ways that they will operate there, that would have come through as a matter of course. But do you feel as though there is a capacity within government that, should this extend into the spring, into the summer, and to wipe out a lot of 2021 in terms of the commercial activities that a sport like basketball or gymnastics in particular might put on in indoor facilities, that government would be able to actually sort of put more money in towards it?
Well, I mean, again, we hope, but we also hope that that's the plan. But we're dealing with today, and we're aware that these problems are coming. I just want to notify around that. But obviously, then the scale of the problem isn't as great. I mean, the crisis is a crisis because we didn't know what was happening. It was just that the lights were switched off, and therefore that creates a problem. Like, the sports are aware that this is not going to go away for a few months, and next year is going to be difficult. But it allows them to plan then. There's a level of I would say calmness isn't the right word, but there's a realism that it's going to take a couple of years to work our way through this. So the sports one of the big lessons out of this is that the governing bodies, were being well managed. We're always talking about governance, but the sports are well managed. They did have reserves. They were able to adapt. They drew down the horizontal government supports and all of that, and they managed the situation pretty well. So I think that's good. So nobody fell over. I mean, it's a problem, And we don't minimize it. It's extremely difficult, but we are managing it. And each of these things, as we emerge from it, hopefully, we're realistic. This won't go away in a year or two. It'll take a few years to get back. But having said that, today is a huge step forward, and it was a confidence boost. And it is just cash in the bank to allow the sports to continue to trade, to operate. And in some cases, we're watching matches on the television, and in others, it's just to allow their athletes to train or whatever it may be. And absolutely, definitely be ready to turn it on when the time comes and we're able to come back to action. The sports will be ready. We're confident on that.
And the natural benefits that come through to society in terms of mental, physical well-being. RTE are talking about, sort of average audiences of 400,000 for matches over the weekend. So the wider societal benefits of sport are clearly being felt in terms of morale. The list, we've got reaction on the website from a number of different sports that are all very pleased about it. The reaction seems to be broadly positive. Two that stood out that didn't actually get funding, but you may have covered that in terms of the high performance side of it. But the Olympic Federation and Paralympics Ireland, they're going to have a bigger cost base next year than they could have anticipated. Will there be a capacity for them to come back in next year and find that they're in a similarly supported position as the big three sports are this year?
Well, I mean, the quantum, I don't know, but I mean, it is important to acknowledge the Olympic Federation, Paralympics, and a number of other sports bodies. It's a mature decision to say we're not going to, this doesn't apply to us. Like, it's not a financial problem for us this year. But next year, they flagged. We know next year is going to be expensive. It's it's like the last year of one Olympic Paralympic cycle and the first year of the Paris cycle. So there's a lot going on next year. It will be expensive, as well as additional costs that arise from the practicalities of living with COVID. So we'll deal with those issues next year. We just had to deal with 2020 this year, but we're aware of it. It's on our minds. It's conscious. Just want to acknowledge, as I say, that collegial approach by those organisations, the Olympic Federation, Paralympics, amongst others. Like, none of the sports partnerships applied on their own behalf. They only applied on behalf of their communities, for example. A number of the other governing bodies also decided, which was great. It was very helpful to us, so that helped us from the get-go to really target the money to where it was needed. Next year is a different set of challenges, but they're not just in Ireland, they're globally. Everybody's going to face the same difficulties next year. So onwards, and we'll see, and hopefully, the announcement this year and whatever happens from now to the end of the year certainly gets us through the first, really, I suppose, the first year, the first 9 months, and be ready then. And make sure we're as strongly positioned as we can next year to get sport back, then work on making sure that the business models are ready for whatever's no doubt another challenging year. But at least we're still in there fighting, doing our best.
Well, the funding is very detailed. It's very substantial. All of the details are on the Sport for Business website. There's funding for disability, for vulnerable groups, as you said, across all the different local communities. So it's not just going through to the big three sports, but plenty to have a look at over the coming days. And Sport Ireland and the government have provided a very strong shoulder for sport to lean on. This is the evidence of it now. And thank you very much for taking the time to explain it to us today. Paul McDermott from Sport Ireland.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Will. Thank you.